So you started scooping, started the business of scooping in 2010-ish?
2010-11. So I say 2010-11 because officially Josh and I partnered and established Pooper Troopers USA LLC, our very first incorporation.
Yep.
In November of 2010. So we agreed that we were getting into business earlier on in 2010, a little bit earlier on, just a few months before that. But we didn't officially scoop our first 2 homes until February 2011. We had 2 houses together our very first week. So as we're speaking right now, we're expanding corporately to Nashville. We started this week, the week we're in, 2 big milestones this week. We surpassed 10,000 clients.
Yep.
And we scooped in Nashville for the first time ever. The first week of scooping, we had 6 clients in Nashville. But in February 2011, we weren't even servicing all of Dallas-Fort Worth. We just serviced Collin County, the northern portion of Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And we got our first 2 clients in the same week. We got the first 2 in the same week. And we went out and scooped them together. And we wanted to be detailed. We were clueless. I mean, other than... Okay, maybe I could probably say I had gone up to that competitor, the competitor's trucks that were sitting in the parking lot that was my inspiration for starting the business. I got tired of seeing those trucks.
Tell me you keyed them.
And I didn't do that, but I did drive up to them and just look into the back of the beds to get a sense as to what equipment they had.
Yep.
But aside from that, we were clueless. And that's pretty clueless in itself. So we had the idea that we were going to use 5-gallon. This first 2 first 2 clients, we wanted to be as thorough as possible. We were going to be the most thorough pet waste business there was. So we had the bright idea that we were going to use 5-gallon buckets, mechanics gloves, and we were going to pick everything up with our hands. And so literally, we don't have a picture of this, but Josh was on one side of the backyard and I was on the other, and we were literally down on our hands and knees picking up poop because it was the first time, so it was busy. It was February.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that the reason that this industry tends to grow starting about January and through spring is because a lot of parts of this country you don't mow in the winter, and so people their yard has stopped getting mowed, and so it's not getting chewed up with the mower and mulched in or whatever.
Yep.
And they're looking out and seeing all these landmines. And so that's a big reason as to why in this business and as you're starting and developing, you generally probably going to start January, February. Right. That's when you're going to get the most clients. So we started with those 2, and we were picking up. We quickly learned that was not the way to do it. Quickly.
So you went and looked at your competitors' trucks, and you saw in the back what?
Oh, we did more than just look. I could go a step further. Probably a few months thereafter. Again, we're trying to figure out how to get clients. We're obsessing over, we've got to figure out how to get clients. It's not door hangers. We had just discovered, as I mentioned earlier, we had discovered SEO, search engine optimization, and the desire to need to have a website, but that's a long game. That's slow. We wanted to figure out, how do we get clients? Who are all these clients? And at this time, we didn't even have a full route. I mean, we only got 25 clients our first month. Our first year, we only had 25 clients. It's not like we exploded in year 1.
Sure.
Well, at some point in that first year, we had the bright idea that we were going to follow our competitors. We're going to follow them to their houses.
Mature.
Yeah, real mature. Well, then we thought that they knew who we were and that they were following, and that they knew we were following them because they were taking all these weird ways, and we were like, where are they going? And we think they knew we were following them, so we never did that again. We tried it once, and we realized that probably won't work.
Good call.
And yeah, not exactly the most professional, but the point is we were hungry. We were hungry to learn. We were hungry to figure it out. We knew there was something to this business and that we didn't have it figured out. And there weren't necessarily any real resources, even like there are now. Now there's lots of guys. There's social media groups that can help, and podcasts like this one. But then there wasn't anything. Nothing.
So the point I was trying to get at earlier is you saw what equipment was in their trucks. Did you see rakes in these trucks?
Oh, yeah.
So even after you saw there were rakes,
we wanted to do it our own way. We wanted to figure out, and again, the general is way more so like this than me, but I'm like this too. He likes to reinvent the wheel. So we both like to do things all the wrong ways.
So you can find your own.
Right ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I can respect that. I can respect
But
that.
admittedly, if there is one thing that is standardized, generally standardized within this industry, we've talked a lot of this industry is not standardized.
Sure.
And I think there needs to be more standardization. But if there is something that is standardized, it is pretty much how you get the waste out of the yard.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say, I mentioned earlier, there's some companies in parts of the country that I call the desert, where they're doing rocks and where they're maybe picking by hand, and there's an argument to say that is thorough and efficient when you're in rocks, especially. It's also gross.
Rather.
But by and large, something that has been well standardized is the rakes and the dust buckets and how we go about how we line them with trash bags. That's pretty universal across the industry.
So over time, you kind of figure out the better way, more efficient way to be able to do your job. So at what point do you start to gain a little bit of momentum of increasing clients?
It took years. And it took years, partially because of our expertise and understanding and experience and our ability to focus on the business, because while it was a full-time business from day one, Monday through Friday, it was a secondary business to what Josh and I were building in our lawn and landscaping business. That was what was paying our bills. And so whether it was, again, February 2011, we did not even have a website. We didn't have a website until a few months later for our pet waste business.
Yep.
Well, what we learned during this time was that search engine optimization and digital media and having a website mattered a lot. We couldn't be in business in this industry without it. I could mow yards all day long without having a website. I could not do that in this business necessarily in 2011. And so, it took time. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was easily a year and a half, I mentioned earlier, it was 2 or 3 years before we had our first truck. 2 years. I think we got our first truck in 2013. And it was actually given to us. A longtime friend, and he was a customer of Pet Waste. He was one of our oldest and first pets. His parents were our customers. And they had this old truck that was sitting in their driveway, a Nissan Frontier. And it had been sitting there. It was out of registration. The city was basically going to make them haul it off or get it out of there because of the registration, and it wouldn't run. And so they said, if you'll haul it off, we'll give it to you. And $800 worth of repairs, and it was ready to run.
Wow.
And we used it for a solid year.
What a blessing.
That replaced the Jeep Wrangler that we were using prior to that. It was getting tough to use that. But no, it took years. My wife, Jennifer, she was a school teacher. When we started the business in 2010, 2011 was her last year of teaching. She was pregnant with our first child. And I can remember joking with her. And she was not necessarily supportive of our pet waste business. She did not see it at all. She didn't see how it could be a business. She didn't understand why would you start that business. And so I can remember even where we were on the street. And I told her, I laughed with her, and I said, you just wait. I said, we're going to be at dinner with your teacher friends, and they're going to ask what your husband does for a living, and I'm going to blurt out, I scoop poop for a living. That's what I do. I scoop dog poop. And
then you're going to pay their tab.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was early on, and she just rolled her eyes. But it was 2013, 2014 when it started producing something. It started actually creating any kind of revenue that was more than hundreds a week, right? Or even, tens of dollars a week. And that's when I was able to give her and I told you so.
Yeah.
And she was able to say, okay. And she started seeing it. And that was about the time where I would say we had, we were hitting 100, 150, couple hundred clients. And it was starting to become something.
So was it the use of a digital strategy that started to help increase that? Okay.
Digital. Now, that's not to say word of mouth doesn't work. Sure. But word of mouth has never been to me, word of mouth, like you got a marketing plan and a marketing strategy, and word of mouth is always one of your strategies. But word of mouth is only the beginning of your marketing. It shouldn't be if that is your primary source, you're not spending enough on marketing, assuming you want to grow. assuming you want to grow. Now, if you're meeting your objectives and you only have a goal to make yourself full time, and that's happening well within your timeline, all through word of mouth, fantastic, more power to you. But at the same time, if you're really looking to build a business, you want to allocate a percentage of your revenues from day one to your marketing strategy, to your website, to whether it's Facebook can work now as well. Facebook works. Google works, AdWords works. Yeah. But you got to have a digital presence.
So we'll be spending some time talking about challenges and struggles you went through, the process of getting to, the point that we're at today with over 10,000 clients. Tell us about the story of when you guys went to a different state, opened up a different market.
Well, I won't even start. I'll start with going to a different city. So we're based in Dallas-Fort Worth. It actually, I mentioned earlier, we started in northern Dallas-Fort Worth, in Collin County, Allen, Plano, Frisco, McKinney. And it wasn't until 2014, we probably had a few hundred clients. We said, you know what? This digital media and this SEO thing does there's something to this. And we said, let's go into every city in Dallas-Fort Worth. Let's not just focus on the northern suburbs. Let's expand. Let's start planting seeds. Because even though that had kind of been contradicting to what we'd historically focused. We'd historically focused on density and having a small territory. But we realized with pet waste removal, again, talking about what I'm talking about now, I was talking about then, it's an emerging industry. So few people have heard of this industry by comparison to how many people could benefit from this industry. And so we looked at that and said, we want to cover the biggest area we possibly can, the most amount of homes that we possibly can. And so we went into the rest of Dallas-Fort Worth through digital media, through creating certain SEO strategies. And the business exploded. As we went into the rest of Dallas-Fort Worth, we had a lot more area. Well, the following year, so this is February 2014. Fast forward a year and a few months, and it's spring. It's April, or it's March of 2015. And we're looking at that. And again, it's not like there was just this long-term strategy that we had. It wasn't at all that. It was March, and Josh had a little bit of time, not really, but he did. And we had the resource, and as far as an extra truck, and it was like, well, hey, let's go to Houston, let's go to Austin. And so it was a quick decision. We're going to Austin. Okay, great. We're going to offer service in Austin, and we got one customer. How are we going to get them done? Well, at this point, we don't have the resources to hire full time in Austin for one guy, and it's not easy to find a full time or a reliable person who's going to scoop 1 yard or 5 yards a week. That's not very feasible, and we didn't even have the resources to be able to buy a truck. At this point, I can actually specifically remember between going into all of Dallas-Fort Worth and going into Austin was when we started buying new vehicles, specifically Toyota Tacoma, specifically work trucks. It wasn't whatever truck could be given to us or whatever cheap. We started having a strategy behind that and really focusing on our brand and making sure that we were wrapping all of our vehicles. That sort of thing didn't start until 2015. We went years where we just made do. And I think that hurt us. We should have, if I started over, we'd be branding our trucks from day one. But we didn't do that. But we had invested in these trucks. Well, we couldn't afford to buy another truck. We had just really stretched ourselves by buying. I remember we bought our first 3 trucks all together. 3 trucks. We only needed 2. We were really being ambitious on that third. And of course, we filled that 3rd truck up that next year. But going to Austin, the only way we were going to do that was Josh literally drove down, scooped the one house, drove home. So imagine a 6-hour commute, 6.5, 7-hour commute for one house.
One house. That's crazy.
Trip. And it just built from there. Well, literally the next month, so that's April of 2015. The next month, May of 2015, we said, well, gosh, we've gone to Austin. Might as well drive on down to Houston and scoop some down there too. And so that's literally what we did. We just started advertising in Houston, got a customer, started with one, and would literally do a triangle. If you look at a map, Dallas, Austin, Houston, we literally, he, and I say we loosely, he would do it. Now, I mentioned earlier I'd scooped in an SUV before because I remember we went on a trip to Galveston, a family trip, and we only had 2 customers in northern Houston at this time. So this is summer of 2015. And rather than Josh have to drive all the way down to scoop these two houses, it was like, well, gosh, we're driving down there. I'll stop and scoop these 2 houses on my way to Galveston. So I drove down. We're in my wife's Acura MDX, and we stopped off the highway. I had the equipment. I had made sure to clean everything because it was in an SUV. But we made sure to and had my couple-year-old son, 3-4-year-old son in the back seat. Pulled up to the first house, scooped it, went to the next one, scooped it, went to the gas station right around the corner, threw the poop in the trash at the gas station, drove on to Galveston. That same trip, I think, coming back, we went through Austin to see family, and I scooped 2 more houses in Austin at that time.
Wow.
I think he had done a few others that
Were
week.
these weekly clients?
These were weekly clients, yeah. Wow. We did not offer twice a week or multiple times a week in these new areas at this time. It was once a week, and sometimes it would be a bi-weekly. But no, we were pretty immediately driving to Austin, driving to Houston, and then from there our expansion went on to Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and that was in late 2015. We went to Oklahoma and Tulsa. In fact, it was December 2015. We did the same thing. It was like, okay, well, we're going 3 hours south to Austin and 4 hours south to Houston. Let's go 3.5 hours north to Oklahoma City and 3 hours north to Tulsa.
So did you do any market research before you just?
No.
It was just, hey, it's a few hours away. Let's go.
As a franchisor,
sure. Yeah.
We have market research and we understand demographics and we have software that can help us with those things. But at that point, no. Literally, it was he and I coming into an agreement. It started off as, what can we drive to?
Yeah.
And once we got to the point where, okay, we can't drive to these places anymore, this is a next step. Well, we knew there were various steps. Like here was one. For a long time, it was like, when are we going to go to a market that has snow? That's a totally different market.
Yeah.
But we said, okay, before we go to that, let's solve the problem. Let's figure out how to go to a market that we can't easily wake up at 3 a.m. and drive to. Because we were capable of doing that so far. Well, that first market, if my memory serves correct, I can't now remember. I'm pretty sure we went to Phoenix first. Of course, that's like a 19-hour drive and or a 2 or 3 hour plane flight. That was a different animal. That was a different animal because you're scooping in rocks.
Yeah.
So that was new. But he and I drove together out there. We drove the first truck out, and we scooped the first house. In fact, I remember now. I don't remember exactly which order, if it was Phoenix first or Atlanta first. But we went to Phoenix. You know what the decision to go to Phoenix was? We were losing a client that was moving from Dallas-Fort Worth to Phoenix. Wow. And Josh was on the phone with him because at this point he's still operating in the office a lot. We had somebody helping, I think, but he was mainly the office.
Right.
And he said, hey, where are you moving to? Sorry to lose your business. We're moving to this part of Phoenix or this part of, Arizona. And he said, I've got great news. We're going out there. We're going to be offering service out there.
Love it.
And we had 2 clients the first week we started. One of them was that client.
That's awesome.
I think it was probably 3 or 4 weeks before we hit that because they were still moving, but we timed it to where basically we were hitting that market when they were moving in.
Right. So I imagine like the pool industry, it's very competitive.
Yeah.
Like it's very territorial.
The pool industry is very much so like that.
Was it the same way with the pet industry? So when you went into Austin, were there any other pet waste removal businesses that were like, hey, get out of here, this is mine?
Kind of, but yes and no. Again, this would probably be more talking about, at this point, I was not a part of the day-to-day. Mr. Cahill was the one who knew all of the competitors. He knew the biggest company in Austin, the biggest company in Houston and whatnot. And oftentimes they were the national franchise brands that were among the biggest. By the way, that should say something. It isn't a happenstance or a random thing that the biggest local operations in pet waste removal, not always at all. In fact, we're a lot bigger than most any of our any franchisees out there in each territory individually. But at the same time, by and large, when we were going into Houston, when we were going into San Antonio, the biggest companies in those markets are usually franchise brands. They're usually national brands. that are not the cheapest, usually the most expensive.
Yeah.
That should be telling too for an aspiring pet waste business.
Right.
Is there is something to benefits in franchising. Now, I was never going to buy a franchise, and so I can understand why you don't, but there is something to it.
Yeah.
But no, Mr. Cahill did a lot of that. Now, territorial. Yes, there is an element of, there's competitiveness. Of
course, yeah.
And so we're very competitive. And yes, we have competitors in these markets. But on one hand, again, it's a very fragmented industry. There's lots of people out there doing it independently. And there's also not tons of formality and formalization to it. It's not like there's a industry meeting or a trade group in a localized area, and it's like, well, they're coming in. No, competitors really aren't talking amongst each other. I don't believe, not compared to other industries, especially locally. On a national scale, you've got social media and whatnot, and people are talking, but they're not. I've never. In the lawn care business, I know my top competitors. I've had lunch with my top competitors. The pet waste industry up to this point has not necessarily been that way. At least not for us.
Yeah.
There are people in the industry that are friends and that collaborate.
Sure. Yeah.
And build upon one another's businesses.
Yeah.
They're not usually direct competitors, though.
Yeah. Just curious if you had any stories of someone trying to sabotage you as you enter in the market.
Not really. I do think that there is some of that, especially as we've gotten bigger. We're the company to point to say we gotta beat them.
Right.
I think we had a guy. The best example I'll say to that is Josh had a gentleman, a competitor here locally, a young guy that was starting, and Josh I think even did have lunch with him and met with him, and then not a week later, we're getting screenshots of the guy trashing us on like a next door. I think he had taken a picture. This is what it was. I say trashing us. That's maybe a dramatic. He had snapped a picture of one of our trucks in his town where he specifically scooped, and he had snapped a picture of one of our trucks and basically onto a next door site and basically said, "Oh, come on, so and so town, we can do better than this. Let's hire local." As if we weren't local. Well,
Right,
the thing was our headquarters is literally in the next town over. It's not like we're out in Nashville where we've just gone to and we're not local.
He was just trying to be strategic.
He was being strategic, and so it was savvy on his part.
Right.
It was shrewd on his part. I don't have anything against either of those. What I kind of had against it was, if you're going to do that, don't have lunch with me the week before then do that.
Yeah.
That's
a little slimy.
But by and large, not worried about those things.
Sure, yeah.
I think, like I say, there's enough business out there. Again, I'll use this as that example again. I actually think that in this industry, pet waste industry, in 2022, in 2023, in the coming decade, it will benefit every business to have more competitors with branded billboards on their truck, marked vehicles to say, hey, there's an industry called the pet waste industry, and it exists. So that when Joe Smith is sitting behind a competitor's truck, he's saying, I didn't know that was a business. Well, he might not call them. He might Google it in a week.
Yeah.
And that's where we come. And so there's benefits. I'll use another analogy on that. My daughter started soccer, and their coach lived in a town, a couple towns away from where we're at now. They lived a few suburbs away, and I had a Scoop Soldiers hat on, and she says, "Now, what do you do? What is Scoop Soldiers?" I said, "Well, it's a pet waste business. We go in your backyard, and we scoop your dog's waste on a weekly basis. $15, $20 a week." And she says, "That's awesome." She goes, "I think y'all have a big billboard up on 380, don't you?" I said, "I don't think we have a big billboard on 380. No, I don't think that's us." She goes, "Well, there's a business on 380, and I thought it was a military theme. I know it's pet waste removal." And she said, "But it's on 380. I said, "No, that's not us." Well, she messaged me later on. She actually was interested enough to message me. She says, "This is the name of the company." I don't remember the name. But here's the point. She had seen that billboard for a pet waste industry, and she just automatically assumed it was my business because she's really never seen or heard of the pet waste industry before. And so, again, The more trucks we can have out there branded to say
everyone.
we scoop dog poop, the more people that are going to see that, not think much of it in that moment, but then Google it later, and then they're going to find, who knows who they'll find.
Right. Hopefully us.
Hopefully us.
So, okay, I think we've gotten on a pretty good path talking about benefits of what this industry can look like. Is there anything else that you would say contributed to the success that we've gained over a period of time that you'd want to share?
Constantly obsessing over expansion played a big, has played a part. If we just the general wisdom was stay in Dallas-Fort Worth. You've got years worth of build out and focus right here in Dallas-Fort Worth. What do you need to go to Austin? What do you need to go to Houston for? The general wisdom was that's too expensive. There is an element of truth to that. There is truth to that. However, I am very happy because, again, what we learned was that it's a specialized service. So the bigger the geographic area that we can service with density, in other words, we can't go to rural populations outside of Dallas.
Yeah.
The biggest we can expand in dense areas, the more geographic area, the better, because we're planting seeds. And so we might start with just that one customer in Austin. But fast forward 5 or 7 or 8 years, and with focus and in some ways obsession, you can have 1,000. You can turn that one into 1,000, and so you have that multiplication.
Yeah, it's doable.
But it is expensive, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of driving. I was very fortunate to have a business partner that did most of that.
That sucker, Josh Cahill.
Yeah, I hope he hears that. No, I'm kidding.
No, I kid. Awesome. Well, it's a good story.